Now, when we are talking about that water is the most important natural resource for us, it is very useful for all living things, and as it flows through rivers, seas, oceans, or different sources, obviously it is not pure. It is impure. So, how can we purify water? Will be the next question that arises. So, the water that comes from open sources of water like rivers and lakes often contain undesirable substances like dirt, mud, and germs. And these substances are called impurities. And now we are going to study how to purify water. Now, due to high solubility, dirt particles and dust dissolve in water, making it impure and unfit to drink. So, it is necessary that these impurities are removed before drinking water. So there are generally two types of impurities. One, soluble impurities, which completely mix or dissolve with water. Example is salt. And insoluble impurities are those which do not mix or dissolve in water. Example is sand. Now first we are going to see how to remove insoluble impurities from water. Now, there are different methods used to remove insoluble impurities. The first method which is used is generally called sedimentation and decantation. So what is sedimentation? The sedimentation and decantation, in this case, sometimes water contains mud which is insoluble. If the water is allowed to stand undisturbed for some time, the mud particles settle down, and this process is called sedimentation. The solid matter collected at the bottom during sedimentation is known as sediment. Now, after some time, when the mud particles have settled down, pour the clear water gently into another container. Care should be taken not to disturb the sediment at the bottom, and this process is called decantation. So, sedimentation and decantation is one of the process which is used to remove insoluble impurities from water. Another method of purifying water is to pass it through a muslin cloth or filter paper. Here the filter paper acts like a strainer. It allows the water to pass through it but holds back the insoluble particles. So such process is called the process of filtration. Basically, when you strain tea through the strainer to separate the tea leaves, it's a kind of filtration process, but here we're talking of water. So filtration is one of the process which is used to separate the insoluble impurities from water. Now, this experiment can be performed in a lab, and it is actually used to demonstrate removal of insoluble impurities from water. So in this case, we have to take a circular piece of filter paper and fold it into a cone and place it in a funnel as shown in the picture. The water along with its impurities is gently poured into the funnel with the help of a glass rod. The insoluble particles settle on top of the filter paper as residue, and the clear water is collected as filtrate in a container kept below the funnel. This way, the insoluble impurities are removed from water by filtration method, and the simple process at home such as making coffee or tea requires filtration. Now the next process is removal of soluble impurities from water. So the process which is used to remove the soluble impurities from water is distillation process. So the process of purifying water by first boiling it and then condensing the steam is called distillation. It involves two processes, evaporation and condensation. This method is used to separate soluble impurities from water. Impure water is heated till it boils. On boiling, water evaporates, leaving the impurities behind in the flask. Then the steam is passed through a condenser, which is kept cool by circulating cold water around it. The steam cools down in the cool condenser and changes back into water. This water is collected in another flask and is absolutely pure. So this distilled water is used as coolant in vehicles, batteries, inverters, science laboratories, as well as in making medicines. The reason is that this water is completely pure. Means it is devoid of any kind of minerals or salts, and so it's absolutely free from all the chemicals, and it can be used to perform experiments or to make medicines where no alterations will be occurring. Now we have to speak about purification of water in public water supply systems. So we know that water comes to our house through the PCMC, or the corporation provides water to us. That is the basic right of every human being. But then to provide clean drinking water is the responsibility of corporation. And how do they perform this task? So there is a possibility that even after removing insoluble and soluble impurities, drinking water may still contain germs. So do you know that the clean water which we drink from the tap of our homes is first cleared of its impurities by the water works department before making it available for us? And this process is called water treatment. So the different steps involved in purification of water, we'll discuss them in detail now. And through the piped water we get at home is usually safe for drinking. Sometimes leakages and poor maintenance can still let in impurities and germs. So we should use water purifiers or filters at our homes. So the first step in purification of water in public water supply systems is coagulation. So loading is a process in which alum and some other chemicals are added to the water to attract dirt particles and form clumps. So basically here addition of alum is very important so that it will attract those particles and it will form clumps. Now the second process is sedimentation. So after coagulation, the water is collected in large tanks and left undisturbed, which will lead to settling down of heavier insoluble impurities down at the bottom of the tank. So we have already seen in sedimentation that you keep the water undisturbed for a period of time, you'll see that the insoluble particles will settle down. Then comes the process of filtration. The water is then passed through filters made of sand, gravel and charcoal to remove small floating particles. And the last process is chlorination. Here, the water now which is completely devoid of insoluble impurities, which may still contain germs basically. So here chlorine gas is passed through it to kill the germs, and this water is then stored in a water tank at a higher level. As water always flows from a higher level to the lower level, it is distributed to various localities in the city. This is how water purification takes place in water treatment plants. So this slide basically depicts the 4 steps that are being used in purifying water in water treatment plants. That is, coagulation is the first step where alum will be added to form the clumps. Then sedimentation is the second process where this insoluble particles will settle down. Then filtration is the third process where the water will go through different layers. And then the fourth process is chlorination, that is adding chlorine to the water to kill the germs, and then it will be stored at tanks which are at a higher level through which it will be supplied to different localities.